You know, when you have one of those conversations, you just know it's going to be a goodie. This is it. Today I sat down with Candice Harvey, performance coach and longtime friend that I've known for over 13 years. And we touched on everything. How you know when you should switch out of the corporate world and become your own boss. We talk about performance coaching and the work that she does with her clients and the workshops. How to deal with your nerves before you go and do something in the unknown. We discover everything. And what's key with this, there's tons of implementable, actionable steps that you can take right away. This episode packs a punch. Candice delivers and knocks it out of the park. And she's really transparent, which I think is testament to her, because she's really helping change the lives of people as she comes into contact with that transparency. So I think check out Candice Harvey. You will love her, you will connect with her, and you will resonate with her message, because it comes from the heart and you can tell that she is all in and ready to shake things up. Check it out. Here's Candice Harvey. Candice Harvey, welcome to the Tim Castle Show.
I'm so excited to be here, my friend. This is going to be awesome.
Me too. I'm very happy to have you. So Candice Harvey, you are a performance coach, a team energizer, a life enthusiast. I love that word. You support people to create and live a life you love. You have a performance coaching and leadership mentoring. You've done hundreds of people businesses. You get them clear on what matters most. You remove the obstacles and you help them achieve more than ever before. You are definitely a courageous person doing inspirational things around the world. We are going to love this. I'm going to love this. The audience is going to love this. So to start us off, I'd love to know, who is Candice Harvey?
Love that. What a little introduction. I've got the biggest smile on my face just listening to you like talk me up there. That I could like finish it now and I'd be the happiest ever. So can we just be done, or we actually
We're done.
no?
Yeah.
We're done. We're done.
That's
it. Yeah, please get in contact with Candice Harvey. That's all we need to be able to say. So who am I? So I am obviously Australian. I live on the Sunshine Coast with my husband. We made the exciting decision to move here. Actually, we were living in Adelaide. So my husband is South Australian, never lived anywhere else. And it was one of those COVID days where we were going for a walk. And I literally said to my husband, I was like, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? And usually my husband doesn't really love the coaching questions that he sometimes gets from his wife. And I love the coaching questions. So we're very different, him and I. But he very quickly spat out the Sunshine Coast. And I was a little bit shocked. I thought he was going to give me oh, babe, I don't want to have one of these conversations. But he literally said the Sunshine Coast. And I was like, well, why don't we do that? And it was a big deal. He's got older kids and, you know, our life was in South Australia and we just got married and we decided to move here. And when we did move here, by that stage, I had been working in human resources for 15 years. So I was managing a national team. I was really in the job that I'd always wanted to work my way up to, you know, working in a not-for-profit, having HR people all over Australia. I was doing a lot of traveling myself and I was really where I wanted to be. I was there. I'd kind of done it, you know, after living in London, living in Houston, Texas, doing a lot of fly in, fly out work. I was where I wanted to be, living on the Sunshine Coast and bored Monday to Friday is where I was. You know, I was doing really freaking well in my job. And what happens when you're doing really well is you keep getting promotions, which I would say, yes, thank you. That's wonderful too. But I wasn't excited by what I was doing. So it was one of those moments in my life where I guess I could have on paper continued doing what I was doing and just going through the motions and doing pretty well, or I could do something pretty drastic, which is what ended up happening a couple of years ago, where I just decided, as scary as it was, let's do something different and see if I can shake things up a little bit.
I love the addition of shake this up in there. Yeah. So obviously I've seen a lot of your journey and we've known each other for probably, well, at least like a long time, over a decade. Yeah. And I've seen some of this transition through the UK, through the US, and then Australia. So you're a high performing achiever, you're doing well in your job. 15 years in HR, that's got to teach you something about human behavior. Like what was the tipping point? Was it the boredom, or was it the skills that you learned in HR and you're like, hey, I see this happening and this playing out, I can do something about this myself? Like, what was the kind of tipping point to go this drastic move, as you call it, into your own business, into becoming a full-time performance coach?
Yeah, I guess it was sort of two things. I guess it was the fact that I'd got to where I always wanted to be and wasn't feeling excited by it. And I had a bit of guilt as well, Tim, where I was like, my life on paper looks epic. Like people would look at what I was doing and be like, what would you complain about? Like how great, you're doing what you've always wanted to do. You're healthy, you're living on the sunny coast, you've got a great husband. I do, by the way, I have a great husband. Like everything was looking really good, but it was just for me going like, life isn't a dress rehearsal. And is this what I'm just going to continue doing? And will I get to the end of my life as an old Candice Harvey, being someone who continued to stay in HR? Will that be enough for me? Will I be happy with that? One of my favorite books that I honestly do think changed things completely for me was Bronnie Ware's The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And that book, just like, even saying it, like I'm reading it for the second time, even again now. And it's just, stories of a palliative care nurse where she's talking to people in their last couple of weeks of life, and they talk about what their regrets are, and they talk about, I wish I'd stayed in contact with my friends, or I wish I didn't work as much, and I wish I did more with this one life of mine. And it's all the things that they then realize and think about when they're dying. And I don't think I would have got to the end of the life and be stoked to have stayed in HR, or be stoked to have just done that plodding Monday to Friday and only looking forward to Friday afternoon, a bit of Saturday, and then getting miserable Sunday afternoon, because then you have to do it all over again. I didn't feel like those numbers were good enough, right? So I guess it was, yes, boredom, yes, not wanting to regret a lot that was going on in my life, but there was also this massive pull for me where I felt like I hadn't seen what my potential was. I felt like I hadn't worked hard for anything. And again, that was a weird thing where people looked at it and they were like, you've done well. You've traveled and you've continued to be promoted. You've been stepping up in all these different roles, but I never felt like I'd worked hard for anything. I felt like things just happened, and it was this real curiosity all of a sudden one day where it was like, I wonder what I was capable of. I wonder what I could actually do. And once I started thinking about that, Tim, there was no unthinking it. Like I couldn't actually put it back in a box. I couldn't just decide that, oh, well, forget about it. Just keep doing what you're doing, Candice. Like it's good. I had to just see if there was something there that I could explore.
That was really well articulated. So you had Sunday blues, you had the 9 to 5, you had all of this lack of fulfillment, this dream that you've been going for. You got there, you reached the top of the mountain, and then you're like, is this it? I can do more than this. Like, how long was it then specifically from that moment of awareness or self-awareness where you understood we've got more to do in this life, and we're not going to be happy with just doing the 9 to 5 and the top of this mountain, there's a whole new mountain to climb, before taking action on actually doing that business? And what steps did you take to prepare for that? Like mentally, physically, spiritually, like what was that process like?
It's such a good question, because I think that you can so easily, especially if you've got listeners right now who are thinking, oh, like that's me, like I'm plodding, or I don't feel like I'm living the best life that I can live. Like you don't all of a sudden realize that you're not living the best life, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, boom, check me out, I'm now creating and living a life that I love. Like it doesn't work like that. Like it's almost, for me anyway, it was realizing that I hadn't worked hard for anything, and that, what was I capable of doing? So there was this like pang inside me that was like, I want to be able to figure this out. But I reckon I tried to keep stuffing it down for a couple of years after that, Tim, if I'm honest, because it's freaking scary to do something that you've never done before. My resume oozed HR. Like if you asked me who is Candice Harvey, I'm like, I'm a HR person. You ask me anything to do with people, performance management, redundancies, all that really sexy, cool stuff in terms of managing people in a workplace. Like I gotcha. I've got it covered. There was rarely a question that would be asked of me. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like HR was who I was, So to all of a sudden decide to close that chapter and open something brand new was terrifying. So to be like, oh, snap out of it, Candice, like just keep doing what you're doing, like keep earning good money. Like you're okay. Like just snap out of it and keep doing what you're doing. Because it wasn't just me, right? It wasn't like when you and I were really good friends where I could do whatever I wanted to do because it was just me. I now have someone else in my life as well. And his life is we're doing it together. So if I all of a sudden overnight just say, hey, I'm going to try this coaching thing. I'm going to give this a little bit of a crack and see if I can make some money with it. Like that's a tough conversation to be able to have. But I think that in answer to your question, what happened is once I kind of got that itch of what else could I do, I looked at my HR job and I was like, what do I actually love about it? Like, what is it that I love? Because it can get to a point where you almost can't remember. If you're that unhappy with what's going on, it's like, I don't know what I like about this anymore. Like I'm good at it and that's it, but that wasn't it. The part that I loved about my job was that I got to be that go-to person for people. If they were stuck and they didn't know how to have a particular conversation, they didn't know how to work through something, it was go see Candice and I could work them through that. So that part of my job made me sort of go, I wonder if that could be my full-time job. If I got to wake up every day and be that person for someone who could help them through the tough times and get them loving life more than they currently did, like that would be the best job in the world. So I started studying more about human behavior because I knew a bucket load about it already, just from having a communications degree, working in global organizations, being that go-to for people all the time. But studying more about human behavior, realizing there was this thing out there where you could be a coach. I never knew that. Like when we started being friends, that wasn't my dream, Tim. I wasn't like, I'm going to be a coach one day. That just wasn't a thing, I don't think, back there either. But realizing that there are jobs out there where people need support and they need help outside of the workplace, outside of their friends and family. And I wanted to be able to see if that could be something that I could do. So I started studying more. I started trying not to pack that in the box where I could ignore it. I started having really honest conversations with my husband about it and saying, hey, babe, I'm going to give it a year. I'm going to give this thing a year. And if I do it, great. If not, luckily my resume is full of HR and I'm pretty sure I'll get another HR job. So I tried it. It was a great first year. The second year was even better. And now I just continue going the direction that I'm going, which is awesome.
Okay, so 2 years basically of scratching the itch, uncovering it, shining a light on it, playing with the idea of seeing how it could be, and then finally making the move. I can totally understand, because there's a lot of people that I coach or people that I'm interacting with that also want to be coaches, that want to make the move, that want to move from a corporate job to then go and do something completely different, whether that's coaching or educational or their own fascination with certain topics. They just want to go and explore it, but they're really scared to make the move because it is scary. And some of that scariness is having the conversation with your partner, right? That is a huge part of it, because as you mentioned, if we were back in London 10, 15 years ago, it's just a decision. It's like, right, Tim, I'm going to do this. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. I'll support you in any way I can. And that's it. And it's done. And you're doing it. And all you've got to manage are really how are you going to pay the rent and your food? Minimal. You can kind of make it happen. But when you've got another life that's coming along with you and you're saying, hey, this is a year that you're going to back me, hopefully, to do this, it might affect our lifestyle in some degree if this doesn't pan out. Or straight away, because with that security, the piece around the corporate gig, the high flyer, the job, the perks, all the promotions is now gone. Like, how did that conversation specifically go? How did you approach it together? Because as you said, you're in it together.
Yes, I remember exactly where I was, and I remember where he was sitting, and it was such a special conversation because he was really, I know this is going to sound really strange, but he was giving me his full attention. Like, I think he knew that I was really serious about this, that it was like all of a sudden, like from my years of whinging about HR, well, meanwhile, HR was the best thing I could have done. There is no way I'd be the performance coach I am without all the experience in HR. But there was a lot of whinging about what I used to do. And he was really listening. And I'd done the numbers, right? So it was, as well as we were both in Adelaide. I think this is really important to point out that when we both were living and working in Adelaide, we were both on really good money. So as a couple with no children to have to support as well, our lifestyle was pretty awesome, you know, especially Adelaide. For those who know it is, food and wine scene is pretty up there in terms of Australia. So we were going out a lot. We had a really great, fun social life, and we didn't have to think about money that much, really. We were in a really good, comfortable situation. When we moved to the Sunshine Coast, though, my husband found a job that was a massive step down, because the Sunny Coast is not a big city. So it was, you know, there just aren't the opportunities there. And we really were moving for lifestyle. So my salary, because I was still working in HR, was definitely carrying us. And there'd been a big drop. So here Candice Harvey was about to not only say to have this conversation with my husband, knowing that I have no idea how much money I'm going to earn, but our salary had already dramatically gone down as a couple anyway. And so it was about to go down even more. And that was probably the thing that was keeping me miserable in a job. And it was the money, which is a huge deal. It's definitely not something that we can skip over. Like food is kind of important and rent is important, right? All that sort of stuff. But I actually sat down and I was like, how much do we need at the moment? Right? Like, you know, knowing that our lifestyle is going to change, knowing that if I'm going to do something like this, our lifestyle actually can't stay the same. You know, if I am going to be willing to give this business thing a crack, there are going to be some sacrifices there. And what are we willing to do? And what do we need to be earning? So I sat down and realized that we could actually live off my husband's salary, which was a massive drop. And it still would blow people's mind to be like, you lived off that. You know, I think at the point he's not in that job anymore. He's in a great job now, but he was on about 75,000 a year, right? So we went from both earning big bucks to now living off 75,000 as a couple, which was huge. Like if someone said that to me back when I was in Adelaide, I would be like, there is no way you can live off that. Like no way. And not only did we live off it, I look back at that first year and we didn't really feel it. Like, yes, there were things that we couldn't do, you know, like in terms of jumping on a plane whenever we wanted to do, we couldn't do that. But I realized how much you could live off less, and that we were spending way too much money, like unnecessarily spending way too much money. But the conversation around money was huge. And that first year was not easy. A lot of my lifestyle habits had to change. I was so used to being able to go to the shops and buy whatever I wanted to buy. And there were times where I would freak out and be like, I don't have that money to do that sort of stuff anymore. You know, I'd go and have coffees with my friend and money would be in my mind. I'd be like, I only have 2 clients at the moment. Like, how do I just go and continue this sort of lifestyle? I remember Jason took me out on like a date, and it was very early on. And I cried in the restaurant because I saw for the first time how much wine cost. Like I'd never looked at the cost of wine before. And I was like, holy shit, wine is expensive. And I looked at him and I started crying. I was like, we can't be here. I've just started a business. Like it was ridiculous. It was embarrassing. But money mindset stuff was huge in the beginning that I had to really work through. But I'm so appreciative of that part of it, because I really had no concept of money beforehand. So that was a really cool learning early on. Yeah.
Thank you. I love your transparency. Thank you for going into
You're welcome.
detail, because that's the bit that will actually help people who are struggling to articulate and think about how to overcome something like this, and then also structure a conversation and what are some of the things you need to think about. And then the reality, right? The lifestyle change, but just calling out the fact that you can do it if you want to. It's there if you want to, and not letting the fact that you were living on 75k as a couple and you'd been used to living at a much higher earning rate stop you, but not letting you kind of take that into your client meetings. And this obviously comes back to what I teach around sales and negotiation, all the stuff, like not letting that money or that prosperity consciousness or lack thereof stop you from getting and attracting clients from the business you want to win. And so that brings me to my next question around, like, what is it that you do for businesses? What is the most common thing that they're coming to you for when you're putting on a Candice Harvey workshop?
All different things, Tim, to be honest. So it's really important that when businesses actually go, I think we need a bit of Candice Harvey in our life, it's very much not just a stock standard, let's whip out whatever we can whip out, because there is about 10 different workshops that I do for businesses and they're very different. But it's really about me sitting down with managers and going, what's going on with your team? You know, like I met up with a colleague, well, a business owner this morning, and talking about her team and what's going on for her. And at the moment, they're kind of cruising, right? Like there's nothing really, there's not a lot of urgency going on. People's spending's actually changing. So her business is actually a lot quieter. So it's like we needed to be able to put something together for her that's actually getting a bit of a rocket in the team, right? Like really shaking them up a bit, going, I know things are feeling a bit cruisy right now, but we need to do something different. So for that particular workshop, it's really going to be one that I love, actually, where it's called Not Done Yet, but I turn up on, it's going to be the middle of next month. I turn up and I sort of go through what is actually important and what needs to be done for each of them individually. And then Candice Harvey comes back 8 weeks later. And it's that real accountability piece about what has actually gone on over those next 8 weeks, and what do we need to do going forward for the rest of the year to make sure that we're finishing 2023 off with an absolute bang. So that's one there. But even there's one that I'm running on Thursday this week, actually, and it's called My Chaos to Calm. And it's all about helping employees who are really in those high pressure environments where they are feeling very overwhelmed and they're saying yes to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. And as a result, they get to Friday and they're like, I have no idea what I've achieved this week. None. So that there is a workshop where I go in and I actually get them completely reset and saying, like, what is actually important in your department, in your area, in your particular job description right now? Like, let's get back to basics with that. And once we do get back to basics, let's look at how we can continue to help you to be the best you that you can be, because you were hired for a reason. And I think sometimes that within that team environment, people get lost in that. They forget what that is. And they end up being so reactive with their emails and so reactive to their phones and so reactive to team meetings that they're not doing what they're actually paid to do in the first place. So Chaos to Calm really helps people do a few of those exhale moments to really get back to what's important and kick butt as well. So they're really different, Tim. A lot of the things that I go in with can be completely different, whether it's just focusing on personal development and understanding, again, what individual strengths are, whether it's really looking at if there is that real shakeup that's needed. I do another workshop called Discomfort is Key. I love this one, Tim, because I make them so uncomfortable, but they need to have that reminder sometimes that if people are too comfortable in the workplace, we're not getting the best out of our people. So there's a variety of different things, but the best thing is just to figure out what's going on for your team at the moment and how can we get them performing better than they're currently performing. That's what I help with.
You're speaking my language, Candice Harvey. You really are. I love this. This is making me
Awesome.
so happy. So why is it that people don't do what they know they should do?
Oh, I love this question so much. So many different things, right? Like it comes down to 3 areas really. So it's their mindset, right? And we all know that our mindset can just completely get in the way of everything. It's also lack of accountability a lot of the time. So people, whatever they are wanting to do and they're wanting to achieve, they keep it to themselves, right? And they don't actually let anybody know. And sometimes that can be a really great thing in the beginning. Like you don't need external accountability, but for a lot of the time, majority of people on the planet, we need to be able to have someone that's holding us to account, and they don't have that. And the other thing is just change of focus, where maybe what we said we were going to do is not actually what we want to do a couple of months down the track. Like things continue to keep changing. And I think that a lot of the time people can not take the time to check in with their goals and go, is this actually what I need to do? Because Tim Castle in January of 2023 was a completely different dude to Tim Castle in July 2023, right? Like you have grown so much. Like even the conversations you and I have had over the last, month, like I'm already looking at you going like, this guy just continues to keep growing, which means that our goals become the ones that we set months ago might be too small. And so instead of like reassessing, we can kind of just go, that's too small. And now we end up achieving nothing. So I think mindset, like as you know as well, like I read in your books a lot, Tim, it's everything. It's the foundation of everything is our mindset. You know, if your mindset's good, then you're absolutely cruising and you're doing exceptional things. If your mindset is actually going through like a really tough time and your negative self-talk is just having a complete party, then there's all this self-doubt that just keeps oozing out of you, and you just won't be able to achieve the things that you want to do. It's like that feeling like you're just going through mud, you know, like you feel like this is harder than what it should be, but because your mind actually isn't in the right place. And yeah, again, you know, with accountability, it's a huge one for me as well, where I just don't think that people do the things that they need to do because they don't have the right support around them either. So yeah, in short, I could talk about this forever, Tim, but the main things why people don't do what they wish they could do is your mindset, accountability, and changing focus are the 3 areas. Yeah.
That was a really, really solid answer. I love it.
Thanks.
Wow. Yeah, I concur, and I feel like I just had a talking to there. I'm going to get me some accountability. Yeah, the environment is super important.
Good. I think that's a really good point what you just said then, Tim. Like, I think that, you know, people like you and I as well, and even for other listeners who are really successful in what they're doing, you get to a point where you don't need the accountability like you did, or you think you don't need the accountability. And then you have a conversation like this and it's like, would I do a little bit better if I did? You know, would I be stepping up my game if someone or more people knew what I was trying to actually achieve and do? Like, would I step up? I think that's really cool that you just said that actually just then.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like, would you, yeah, and even would you do a lot better? Like even a little bit better, but would you do like blow your own mind? Would you take more risk? Would you be the person that you actually were born to be, which is actually what you're doing, right? You're stepping into that full version of who you were destined to be. So what I'm kind of getting to here is like the point that people are in their careers, you're going in and you do one-on-one coaching as well. So someone maybe has been thrown off their game, or they have a realization that they've not got the mindset and the accountability, and something's not right. So how do you, if they are fearful, if they're anxious, if they're just not, how do you get them back into a place where they've been shaken up?
I love that. I love that as well, Tim. Like, you have a purpose of where you want this conversation to go, and I have no idea where it's going. It's really fun, me just relaxing. You're like, yeah, we're getting there. We're getting to where I wanted us to get to. I love it. But I guess with one-on-one coaching as well, where and a lot of the time my clients that come to me, they're so uncomfortable about the whole process, right? Like, it's this excited, but it's this unsure. It's this, I've never done anything like this before. Candice seems a little bit like a nutcase, but I love her energy and I feel like she knows what she's talking about. And so they make that massive step to go, let's give this thing a go, or let's try and see what this coaching is all about. And it's usually in the very first conversation that I have, where it's getting people to understand that if you are going to coaching, it's because something's not feeling inside the way that you want it to feel. Something's out of alignment. Something's not feeling as connected as maybe what it used to, maybe it never has, or what you want it to. So it's really about understanding or helping people to really know that the person that they are right now today is not the person they were a couple of years ago. Like you and I said, it's not even who we were 6 months ago, right? And what happens is that people who don't do the work, and I do this with like quotation marks, right? Because we say this a lot, it's very overused that you need to do the work. And it's like, what does doing the work actually means? But doing the work is actually keeping up with who you are now, you know, not allowing yourself to just continue to grow and you just to feel a little bit like, or not grow as it can be sometimes, and feel like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I'm good at. And that's when life just starts to feel smudgy. Life just starts to feel like you are going through the motions because there's no clarity, right? So the work that I do with people one-on-one especially is really going, let's like just have this blank canvas and let's get really clear on who you are today. You know, like, let's actually work out what is important to you now, because what's important to you now is very different to what used to be important to you. And if we keep on that same cycle of what used to be important, like even Tim, when you and I first met in London, like, I mean, we were pretty freaking cool back then, but if we kept thinking that what was important to us back then is still important to us now, like, our lives would be so weird, right?
It'd be super weird.
Yeah, I mean, we were still, you and I like to think that we were like ahead of everybody else, right? Like, right. We knew that there was more to live. We knew that there was like something so exciting out there for us, but still, what was important changes.
We were life enthusiasts at that
I know.
stage, definitely.
we just didn't have the title for it back then, did we, Tim? Like that's, if we had the title, imagine, but we were life enthusiasts, totally.
Places we could have gone. Oh my goodness.
But it's true, you know, and it's just a lot of people haven't done this sort of work before. And I love doing that with clients where it's, let's get clear on everything that's great about you right now. And then once we've done that, it's like, okay, where do we want to go? Where do we want to head to? And that's exactly like where I was a couple of years ago, you know, like if I had someone to sit me down and go through a lot of the work that I help people with now, it would have been incredible. It would have sped things up. It would have given me that confidence and, you know, that real, I guess, belief in myself that like I can do this. Once you get clear on who you are and who you want to be, it then is just a matter of breaking it down step by step and every single day doing something that's getting you to where you want to be. And that's how I help people.
Oh my goodness, this is so good, Candice Harvey. Okay, so the question then becomes, like, I'm intrigued about how you built your business. So you start off 2 years, like 2 years you're into your business, but what did you start with? Was it the workshops? Was it the peak state? Was it the podcast? Like, what were the building blocks to get where you are now, which is 2 years into this business?
Yeah, so definitely started with one-on-one coaching. So yeah, I was, I'm only laughing about this just because I've had to really reflect just recently on what I've done with my business over the last couple of years. Because I remember when I did resign, I had, from my HR job, I had one client. And I'm pretty sure my one client was about to finish up with me in like a couple of weeks, right? So it was like, whoa, this is pretty hectic, Candice Harvey. And letting my husband know, it's okay, babe, I got this. I did not got this. I had no idea what I was doing. But I had one client. And I didn't want to do anything to do workshop, HR, corporate related at all, Tim. I was so done in the corporate space after working in it for 15 years that I needed time away from it. I never thought back then that I would end up doing the work that I'm doing now with businesses. And it is probably, and I get nervous saying this because I feel like my group program, my one-on-one clients might listen to this, but corporate workshops is really up there with one of my favorites in terms of the work that I do. I absolutely love it. And I remember in the beginning, people would say to me, you know what you should do with your background, Candice? You should really get into businesses. And I was like, no, not a chance. No, thank you. I'm focusing one-on-one and then we'll see where it goes. But I think that as a learning in itself is so important for people to hear and to really know that don't hold on to what you think it's going to look like. You know, really allow yourself just to jump in initially to what feels the best for you, you know, what feels like you could really give it everything that you've got initially and then see what it evolves and turns into, because that's what happened. I was doing one-on-one coaching and loving it. Like I remember my books were oozing. I had so many clients. I didn't even know where they were coming from. It was so exciting. And as I got more and more clients, I think, I can't remember how it came about, but one of my clients, I think, was talking to her boss about the work that she was doing with me. He contacted me and he said, would you come and do something similar to what you're doing with so-and-so and do it on a bigger scale for the entire team? And I remember at the time I liked him. And so I didn't really want to do it, but I was like, oh, this guy seems really cool. Like I would love to, why not? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to give it a crack. And I remember doing it and getting into my car and like messaging my husband and going, holy shit, that was fun. Like, I think that this is what I should be doing. Like that was awesome. And then it just sort of started going from there. So it was one-on-one clients are still so important for me because it's, that connection and really understanding from a one-on-one level what's going on for people and what the common themes are for people is just so important. My corporate workshops just give me so much energy. I enjoy them so much. And my group program, my 8-week program, Peak State, where it's for people whose lives feel completely out of balance and they just want these 8 weeks where they can throw themselves into really intense learning and working with Candice Harvey to work out how to go from feeling like my life is all out of whack and all over the place to now I know what I'm focused on and I'm achieving more than I ever have before. So that's a big passion of mine that I absolutely love. So it's those 3 areas. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love it. Right. So you follow your path, you follow what feels good.
Yeah.
And it evolves from there. And you
Totally.
have that freedom rather than trying to put constraints on or say, I won't and will not do this, or you kind of roll with it. And that's
Or doing what people tell you should do, like in the beginning where I had people saying you should be doing corporate workshops, and it's like, that didn't feel right to me in that moment. I wasn't at that space where I could have done that. Like, sure, the money would have happened a lot quicker. Like working with businesses feels easy sometimes, like they have a lot more money than people one-on-one when you're trying to talk about one-on-one coaching. So it felt like a very smart idea, but it didn't feel like the right first move for me. So one-on-one felt like it was the best thing to do to get my confidence up, everything else. And then it morphed into now one of my favorite parts of my job.
Right. Yeah. If you'd have gone straight into it, took their advice, you'd have felt different. You would have been a different version
Totally.
of doing it, because you'd have had resistance to it, because you knew ultimately, this is not what I quit corporate to do. I want to do the one-on-one. You said something about confidence, and I want to dive into that, because I think what you're doing is truly amazing. And obviously we've been on a similar journey, but also like we've lived in similar countries, and now we're, it's cool that our circles are aligning and we're doing podcasts. We've both got podcasts. You've got the show.
I love it so much, Tim. I love it.
There's so much synergy, right? Like there's a lot of similarities here, which is amazing, which is why I think this conversation is flowing so well. And it's because there's just so much alignment here, and there's a deeper understanding of what this means for people who are listening, but also for ourselves, right? But when you get the opportunity to do your first workshop, and it is Candice Harvey going into that, not Candice Harvey from the HR backed with 15 experience and a kind of template that she runs and hasn't had to try, how do you deal with the inevitable nerves? And I want to call this out, because people have sometimes an assumption that just because you're good at it or you do it all the time doesn't mean you don't get nervous. Like if it's public speaking, or you've got big conferences to attend, or you're running a Candice Harvey workshop, it's kind of a myth that people seem to assume that like you don't have a strategy to deal with that and boost your confidence. So how do you boost your confidence and deal with nerves before you go and do a big, large workshop or a presentation or whatever it is that you're kind of feeling a little bit jittery around?
I love this bloody question, Tim Castle. This is so good, because you're so right. I think that people can especially look at someone like me and think, oh my gosh, she's so confident, right? They can look at even my Instagram and see me doing the occasional dancing and all that sort of stuff and just think there is no fear with her whatsoever. And it's not true, and I love that you've actually brought this up, because every single workshop I do, every single podcast episode I record, every single client, to be honest, that I have, there is not anything that I do in my business where I feel like my heart is completely relaxed and I'm completely cruising through Monday to Friday. Like there's not one part of it. So I get nervous all the time, and it's something that I make sure that I'm so clear with my clients about, that if you are feeling like you're nervous, it's because you give a shit. It's because you care about what you're doing. It's because there's this passion there. It's because there's this, if I look back to HR, I don't think I had that heart thing going on for a lot of the time. I was working in HR. I was doing what I had to do, but I wasn't nervous. I knew everything inside out. And it doesn't matter if it's chaos to come that I've been running for 1,000,000 times, or not done yet that I've run for 1,000,000 times. I go into businesses and I'm nervous. I want to be able to put on the best session that I can. I want people to walk away having learned something that they never knew before. And I feel like that with everything that I do. I want to add value. I want to create impact. And I think if you are not feeling the nerves, or you're hoping to not feel the nerves, then you're actually missing the point. It doesn't ever get to a point where, oh, look at me, I'm not nervous anymore. Oh, look, this is so easy for me to do. And I don't ever want to get to that point, Tim, like ever. I love that I have a week that's full of, evening networking events. And I'm the president of one of my weekly networking groups that I run every single week. And every week on my drive to it, I'm like, whoa, got a little bit nervous. Don't know what I'm going to say. Don't know how I'm going to come across. But I don't ever want that to go away, because I think that's when complacency comes in. And I don't think a lot of good comes from complacency. So, I think it's definitely a misconception that, firstly, that nerves just go away. But it's definitely about saying yes to scary opportunities, not saying no because it makes you nervous, or not saying no because you're worried about how you'll come across. Say yes and work out how. If you need to get support from other people, get support. If you need to run something past somebody else, run it past them, but don't ever say no just because it gets your heart racing. Like that's the stuff that you want to be able to say yes to, and hope that it doesn't actually go away. You want that. It's the good stuff.
That was the good stuff. Do you realize how good you are? Do you realize?
Oh, Tim, I'm loving this conversation. I just love talking to you. It's just so, and you're right. I think because we've known each other for a while, and we haven't like totally stuck in each other's lives completely, but we've witnessed each other. We've continued to support each other, and we've got similar values, my friend. So it's pretty fun to talk to you.
That's amazing about the journey with confidence, right? And the journey with nerves, and the fact that you should be stepping into growth, and just you do that, right? You will have helped thousands of people just calling that out right now, just because they can connect and they can see that actually the shell that they see, the external or the result, comes with doing the work. Finger quotes for those on YouTube again, because we want to call out the work, but it is the work. You have to get, like you say, do what you need to do to make yourself feel good, to be oozing with confidence, to feel right, and to also understand that you can accept those nerves, and they can coexist almost. Like you're not like, hey, if they come, I'm a total failure. I can't. Why am I doing what I'm doing? But no, we act anyway. Beautiful, and you would have helped thousands of people with that. Good. Now, when I came on your show, I said something that forced you to ask another question that wasn't on your list of questions.
Is this feels like a payback, is what this is about to feel like. Is it a payback?
Exactly. Payback's one word for it. Exploration is another. I said, I don't believe in balance. I believe in rhythm. Like it's a rhythm that you get into and you're just sort of flying through things, and lots of good things are happening. And when you're
I love that answer. Yeah.
So what is it about balance for you, and what does balance mean to you? Because as you articulated on my podcast, or you on the podcast I was on your show, balance is a big deal for you. Balance is a lot of a core part of some of your programs and the work you do. Yeah. And just like listening to what you've been saying on the show, I have a much deeper understanding around what you're doing for people and how you're bringing them back into alignment to get that accountability so it makes a lot more sense. But I just love to repay the favor there on balance.
I love this so much. So yeah, I think you explained that really well, Tim. But what actually happened when Tim was on my podcast is he made it very clear that he doesn't believe in balance. And I thought, oh gosh, I either, it's one of those moments where do I just let it go, Candice? Like he's my guest on the podcast. Do I let him just talk about what he wants to talk about? But also knowing that a lot of people that know me really well, especially of the work that I do, will be listening to this and be like, are you just going to let him say that, Candice? Are you just going to let him say that he doesn't believe in balance? So I had to be able to talk about it. But the way that you actually explained it was so beautiful. Like I loved it. And, where it is just the rhythm and what guides you and what you like to be able to do to live the best life that you can live. I thought it was brilliant. But what it actually shone through for me when we were having that discussion on my podcast was that the way that people actually, I guess, perceive different words and different terms, it can be quite similar. So I think that what I'm trying to get at is, for me with balance, I think a lot of people who don't believe in balance, what can happen is in their heads that they've got this preconceived idea that if we have work and personal life balanced, it means that, we spend 8 hours at work and we also make sure that we have 8 hours with our family, or that we have this balance between a certain amount every day is spent on our health and a certain amount every day is spent on connection. And it can feel very like unrealistic for a lot of people too. And that's when you start to feel like you're restricted and you feel like it's unrealistic and you feel like it's not achievable. You go, you know what, that balance word, we can chuck it in the bin. I hate it. And I totally get it, right? Like that would make me go, oh, this is not a fun life at all, right? Like this sounds like there's a lot of rules and I don't like rules, yeah? But when I talk about balance, and the balance that I really encourage my clients to aim for, and the balance that I live in on myself, is that we have to create our own balance. We have to allow ourselves time to go. So if this is my one life, and if this is me creating and living a life that I love, what would balance look like for me right now? My balance, Tim, my balanced life in terms of how much I want to exercise and how much I want to spend, how much time I need to spend with my husband, how much time I want to spend working. My balance and what feels good for me is so different to what your balance would be like. Like, it's just different. And that's not right or wrong. It's just that is the way that I want to be able to live my life. But it's still balanced for me, and for you, it's balanced for you. It's when things are living in alignment. It's when things are flowing, when things have this rhythm. That's the balance that you want to be able to strive for. So especially in my 8-week program with Peak State, that is one of the biggest things. It's like, don't feel like you have to be doing what Sally is doing. Don't feel like you have to be living the life that Mark's living. You have to really allow yourself to go, what is the life that I want to live? What would feel exceptional for me? And once we actually work that out, then let's work towards that now that we've mapped that out, as opposed to trying to live how everyone else is living their freaking life. So that's balance. It's about creating it for yourself. And then once you've got that mapped out, let's do the work and get you living your balanced life.
Let's do it indeed. Candice Harvey, you just knocked that out the park. You just knocked that out the park. So,
thanks, mate. It's kind of what I do. It's my job.
Love it. I love it. So thinking ahead, like, where do you envision this being and you being in 5 years? Like, what's gonna happen?
It's such a big question, isn't it? It's just huge. And the reason that I get excited about it, and I don't jump to this is what it's going to look like. And I think it's similar to the answer in the very beginning of my business. It's that I don't want to get myself fixed on this is what it's going to look like, because I know that even this year, Tim, the way that I mapped out 2023, a few months ago, I had to completely sit down and start again, because I was like, oh, this year is going way better than I thought it was going to be. You know, there's going to be things that I thought I really needed to do this year. Like, I was going to do a bucket load of public workshops this year. And I was like, I don't think I need to be doing a bucket load of public workshops in order to be getting the results that I need to be getting. I did not think I'd be starting my own podcast this year, and whoops, that just happened. And it's one of my favorite things, where I get to talk to more people and have people thinking differently as a result. Like, that wasn't the initial plan. So I think it's constantly about evolving. It's constantly looking at what is it that I need in this next quarter that's going to keep me leveling up and stepping up and doing things differently. You know, it's even like, I didn't plan on working on sales this year, right? Like, you're going to be really proud of me how I'm going to just weave this into the podcast here, Tim. Like, I know you're nodding and you're very impressed with me here, but it was not something where I was like, this is a gap for me that I need to start working on, in terms of, am I actually selling, or am I just sitting back and hoping work comes to me? And it was, but is there more that I can do in this area? And I read your book, you know, like, I read your latest book, and it's helped me so much to think differently. And I want to keep being that person. I want to keep going, okay, this is an area that I need to work on. Okay, wealth, I don't really understand that. Maybe I need to work on wealth, right? Like, just to be someone who's constantly evolving. So in 5 years' time, if I continue evolving the way that I'm evolving now, and if I continue being as open-minded and as receptive to new ways of doing things, and helping more people, and adjusting the way that I do that so that I can help more and more people, I'll be pretty impressed with myself. But I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Being a performance coach in 5 years' time, if I am doing that, I will be loving life even more than I am right now. So it's a pretty cool place to be.
What an answer. What an answer. I think that's right. You're already doing it. You're already living it, right? Like, it's very much the theme that you've called out on this podcast and this episode, around living your life, because it is your one life. Like, what the regrets of dying, like that book you called out, and like that's the theme, and you're living it now. So therefore, an evolution of that within the balanced lifestyle would obviously make you very happy in 5 years, because you made the switch. I think this episode is going to be super important for people that are sitting on the fence, that know they have more to give, that know that there's more in them. Like you said, you're 6 months into the year and you've smashed all your goals, and now you're having to reevaluate. Like, and it's not just like, oh, up a bit. It's like, what could your full potential look like? What could Candice Harvey do? And I love that question. And I think people should ask that to themselves. Like, what could you do? What could you do with a bit of Candice Harvey in your life and her coaching? and her podcast and her peak state courses and her workshops, but also what could you do to elevate and where could that take you into whatever field that's going to be? It's like, that's the essence of it. And I love that you have started this from that point. I think that's such a great story, that it started from that, and you own it, right? You own it. You don't just say, look, I did really well and I could have continued with that. You were like, no, I was frustrated. I was bored. I was doing really well and it came so easy. Like, this isn't reaching my full potential. There's a gap here. And then you moved to close the gap, and you went through the pain of crying in a restaurant and not affording wine. Like, it's beautiful. I love it.
It's beautiful that you embarrassed your husband and cried. No, I didn't embarrass him at all. But yeah, you're right. Like, all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly is all part of it. And I think even the ugly and the bad bits are no reason to not do something. You know, if there is something that is in you, and I was just saying this to someone recently, like, and even if my story can help someone, but if there's something in you where you're like, this doesn't feel like the best life that I can be living. I don't know what that looks like, and don't feel like you have to know all the answers either. I honestly didn't. Like I said, I left my corporate job with one client. Like, on reflection, not a great strategy, but also on reflection, great strategy. Like, it did work, but there was, if there's something in you where you're like, there's got to be a better way, and, you know, you can have those conversations, you can work it out from a financial point, what is possible to make you feel safe enough initially to make that jump and to do something different, bloody do it. There is one life, I think. I mean, if there's more, that's really exciting, but I think there's one, and I don't want anyone to get to being on their deathbed and they actually go, I wish I did something earlier, or I wish I did something different. Do it now.
The headline of this podcast, Bloody Do It by Candice Harvey.
I quite like that, actually. I like it. Yeah.
It's strong.
Yeah, it's strong.
So, Candice Harvey, this has been one of my favorite conversations ever. And I do believe it's going to give so much value, but also change some lives in the process, lots of lives. Where can people reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you? What do you suggest for them to come on the full Candice Harvey experience if they've heard something they like today?
Oh, I love this so much. I hang out quite a bit on Instagram. So Candice Harvey __. You can find me there. I do have a podcast as well, which is the Shake Up podcast with Candice Harvey. So new episode every week. If you want to listen to more of this voice, it's terrible. Like, as in the voice that I've got, like, you can't change your voice. You're just stuck with your voice, right? You can make so many changes, Tim, to so many things, but the voice, how's it going? Yeah.
Just get an AI translator. But anyway, yeah, don't. I like your voice. Your voice is great. It resonates.
Thanks, mate, because it's not going anywhere. So I'm stuck with the voice. I'm glad you like it. So that was great feedback. But other than that, reach out, send me messages. I love talking to people. People are my favorite thing ever. Tim, I have absolutely loved this conversation. It has just been so much fun. I hope that it has got people thinking a bit differently.
Thank you. You've blessed some lives today, and we'll have you on again in 6 months, a year. And
okay. All right, then.
Okay.
See you soon. Okay. See you, Tim.
Gotcha.